this is not a dumb question, because the answer is it varies. Like, it can really change depending on the airport that you're layovering at, what country it's in, what route you're taking, and if the connection time is enough. Again, it just really depends on what airport you are at and what passport you hold. Because you're asking specifically about international layovers, those things, they all make a difference. So the short answer is you don't know. You don't know until you know. And here are some things to keep in mind when you're trying to figure this out. So how do you know if you need to recheck a bag? Typically, I experience this the most when I'm re-entering into the United States. So I've had to do this at Newark and JFK specifically, both in the New York, New Jersey area. I can't remember if I've done it at any other airports. I think it's really common in the US. So like once you first enter whatever that initial airport is, wherever your layover is, I think it's pretty common to have to recheck your bag before you get onto your domestic flight within the United States. Outside of the US, I don't think it's as common, although it does happen periodically. A lot of times what will happen is you stay behind security. You don't necessarily have to leave the airport, unlike at JFK, where I once almost missed my flight at Christmas time. That was really fun. Anyways, typically when I experience this, the conveyor belt is still back behind security, and then you just walk it over and hand it to another person there behind security. You don't really leave the security area. You just have to take your bag and hand it off and recheck it. I don't know. That's just what I've experienced most of the time. But generally, internationally speaking, I have not had to recheck my bag on any like international flights, even when those legs are maybe in different countries. If you're worried or unsure, I would say visit the airport website. You might be able to find a lot of good information there, or just like Google it and see if any like public forums or like Reddit forums or anything like that have people asking and then people responding. And how do you know if your connection time is enough? Again, this is just really a guesstimate. No one really knows if a connection time is going to be enough, because there can be delays, there can be all sorts of stuff that kind of get in the way of how much time you need. No less than 1 hour. I think 1 hour is really, really pushing it for an international flight layover. This can just really vary depending on what airport you're having your layover at, if you have to go through immigration at that airport, what passport you hold, whether or not that immigration is going to be fast or not fast. For example, I just flew from DFW to London to Italy, right? Okay, so the UK has a separate immigration system from the rest of Europe, which is most of Europe is in the Schengen area. And so our layover was completely different. It was not connected to my final destination at all. However, we didn't go through immigration in London. All we had to do was go through like a separate security. But it took about 25 minutes from like to get off the plane and to take the little tram into like the terminal area. And then from the terminal area, then we had to walk to our actual gate, which took another like 10 or 15 minutes. So that process and that security could have taken so much longer than it actually did. And so there's a lot of variables there, whether or not you're doing full immigration, you're just doing a security, how long the line's going to be, what distance you have to travel in the airport. A really big airport like London Heathrow is going to take you so much longer to get through than, say, a different international airport that maybe is a little bit smaller and doesn't have quite the same amount of traffic that Heathrow has. Now, say I'm re-entering the US and I'm going through JFK, for example, which happens pretty frequently. I have global entry, so I know that the immigration process for me to get back into the US is going to take under 5 minutes. It literally takes me no time at all to get through immigration, but I still have to travel the length of wherever our arrival terminal was into the other terminal at the airport to take my like now domestic flight. And that process, that length of time can be pretty lengthy. Say generally for an international layover flight, 2 hours plus is plenty of time. And I didn't even address what happens if your layover is in the country that's your final destination, but not your final city. So like, for example, I was flying to Prague, but my layover was in Germany. So I entered Schengen in Germany and I went through immigration there, and I had to stand in line for maybe like 30 minutes to get to the immigration officer before I was able to go on to my next flight onto actual Prague. Another example would be I was flying to Kilifi, Kenya, but my layover was in Nairobi. That was the main airport. And then from there, I took a smaller plane to Kilifi. So I did immigration in Nairobi, and I think I stood in line for an hour. I was the very back of the line. I stood in line for an hour before I got through immigration. And then I had to actually exit the airport and go to like a separate terminal that was like kind of outside. It was like for their domestic flights. It was teeny tiny, and then I had to go through security and enter there to get to my flight to take to Kalifi. So again, it really just depends on the route you're taking, where you're going, what passport you hold, and what the process in that country is actually like. So it's not a dumb question at all. It really isn't. It's really just going to depend on the trip that you're taking. And then once you know what trip you're taking and kind of the airports you're going to, then you kind of look into more specifics about those countries, what it's like for the passport that you hold, and just sort of what to expect. I hope that helps.